So welcome everyone to this Safe Places Lunch webinar, which is titled, What Do People Say About Parks in Stockholm? And I'm your host, Jonathan Abraham, and I'm part of the Safe Places Network here at KTH, Royal Institute of Technology. And the Safe Places Network is the one organizing this webinar series. And this is the second webinar. And if you missed the last one, which was about explosions in Stockholm, be sure to check out the recording that we have on our on the Safe Places website. For those of you who might be new, Safe Places is an interdisciplinary network that brings research, education, and practice together on the topics of safety and security, with special attention to the role of place and environment. And today's session clearly is linked towards this idea, where we look at the more specific specific typology of place, and namely the parks and green spaces in cities, and particularly how they are perceived and experienced in terms of concerns and safety, and what methods we can use to capture these perceptions. And it is my pleasure to welcome today's speakers here, Lisa Josefsson, Professor Vania Ceccato, and Professor Andrea Nascetti. So welcome, thank you. And yeah, perhaps you can introduce yourself a little bit more in detail.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. So I'm Lisa, and I'm a research engineer for this project here at KTH.
Hi, my name is Vania Ceccato. I am at UX, the Urban and Community Safety Research Group at the Urban and Regional Studies.
And thank you for the introduction. My name is Andrea Nascetti. I'm also working at KTH in the Geoinformatics division.
Thank you. All right, so this research, as I mentioned, examines concerns and themes expressed by park users, but it's based specifically on crowdsourced data. And to define it for the audience a little bit, crowdsourced data is information collected from a large group of people, typically the public, who then voluntarily contribute views and observations, feedback, or insights through digital platforms or other means. But Vania, perhaps you could tell us a bit more. What is this project actually about?
Yes, this project is about parks, but also about citizens of Stockholm reporting, their experiences in parks. As you know, parks are very important for the urban quality of life. People can use it to do sports, for social interactions, and families with kids make use of parks. And so you count quite a lot on the quality of the park. Some parks are good. You don't have any types of problems there, but sometimes have problems with maintenance, light is broken, or there are things problematic with snow plowing or things about traffic safety. So people use, for instance, in this case, a digital platform called Ticketil here in Stockholm. It can be an app, but also people can use the website of the municipality to report these incidents. People can report complaints, ideas, but also praise the municipality by the work that they are doing. So traditionally, actually, people can use surveys, but that means that people needed to recall how the park is and where the problems are. With the, crowdsourced data, most likely people using their, an app and really sometimes taking photographs of those places and try to highlight, for instance, the problem, or if they are happy with a particular feature of the park. these kinds of comments, they remind us about people's relationship to the environment. Some of these sentiments to these parks, they are positive. People, love their parks. They are attached to that park, maybe close to their homes. This is connected to what in the theory we talk topophilia. But some parks, sometimes people are complaining about, dark strokes or, problems, and some of these may cause fear or aversion, which Yu Futuan mentioned, or in the 70s as being an example of topophobia. So we use with machine learning, which Andrea will be talking later on, we will flesh out this kind of sentiment analysis, what people are talking about these parks. So we are very happy to actually do this work, and we are doing this project funded by the Stockholm municipality and also KTH Digital Futures.
All right, thank you. Just to remind the audience that you can write questions in the chat also, so we will read them later to the speakers afterwards. But yes, so thank you, Vania. And perhaps, Lisa, can you explain a bit more about what you actually want to achieve with this project?
Yeah, so the aim of this project is to understand what people are talking about in parks using this tictile data. And specifically, we want to analyze spatial and temporal patterns of the entries, and then identify themes of narratives, and also explain geography of entries and reflect on the values of using crowdsourced data in planning parks.
And as I understand it, crowdsourced data, that's with these apps, the volume is quite big, and that's very diverse in the nature of the data. But how do you then extract more actual valuable information from this?
Yeah, so we initially had a very large data set of about 400,000 comments. So we needed to do some cleaning to begin with, remove any duplicates or, we had a lot of entries that didn't have any coordinates, and since we wanted to look at the spatial relationship, we needed to remove those too. So then we moved on to our sentiment model. So we used a pre-trained model to categorize comments as positive, neutral, or negative in their sentiment. And we also used another model to get topics assigned to the comments. So both of these models were developed for Swedish specifically, and they were by the National Library of Sweden. So, yeah.
All right. So, Andrea, could you elaborate more on these models that Lisa mentioned? These models for sentiment and topics. Like, how exactly do they work, and why are they used?
Yes, so we are using two different type of approaches, machine learning models, to analyze this like unstructured text data coming from the crowdsourced app. So the first one is called sentiment analysis, and basically these models are able to read all these text entries that Lisa mentioned and understand the emotional scale of these entries. So it's a way of understanding if people are positive, negative, or neutral about the comment that they input in the app, and the model are smart enough to understand difference between different sentences and how these are related to the emotion of the people writing this sentence. The second machine learning model that we use, it's called topic modeling, and topic modeling is a way of analyzing still the text, but it's a step forward in the sense that we can not only classify the text in positive, negative, but we can understand the main topics that are inside this large unstructured text data. And the model are different respect to the traditional way of analyzing text data, where we were searching for keywords. Let's say you search for some keyword in the text and find how many entries are attached to that keyword. But this model are smart enough to understand the meaning of the sentence. So imagine to have a sentence that is like the bank, where you put the money in it, or a bank river. Bank is the same keyword, but it's a completely different meaning in the sentence. And that the model can understand this in the text and classify the text in different topics. And that's what we did in Stockholm. We tried to feed this amount of crowdsourced data into the model and try to understand how we are using and what the people say about parks, as Vania mentioned at the beginning.
So when you had extracted these comments and observations made in the parks, how did you actually use them? Did you have to make any interpretations or like predictions about the patterns in your data?
Yeah, we actually did a regression, but before that we wanted to filter the points, because we have all the points for the whole city, so we wanted to get the ones for parks. So we did it in 3 different ways. One was with just a geographical boundary of parks, so we just extracted the points from that. But we also made a list of keywords that we thought were related to parks, with words like just park, but also things like nature reserve and similar words, and like official and unofficial names of parks. So for example, Rålambshovsparken, or the unofficial Rålis. So we had those in the search terms as well. And for one of those filters, we searched for those words specifically, so it had to be in the comments, or for the other filter, the model could find similar words to those as well. So yeah, but then this is what an example of how that looked like. So for the by location, you can obviously see it's within the boundaries of the parks, but for the other 2 filters, you see that there are points outside of these boundaries as well. So, and also one of the same comment could be caught by all 3 filters, or just 1 or 2. But yeah, we're mostly going to focus on the ones within the boundaries. But to your question, we used wanted to model the reporting and to predict reporting behavior in parks. So we used the within boundaries filtered points, and the dependent variable was reportings of counts. So for the 3 different categories that we had, which were praise, and then we had maintenance requests and complaints. We grouped those together, and then ideas. So we did those in 3 separate regressions. And among our independent variables were distance to the city center, and amenities, and also socioeconomic variables like income. Yeah.
Yeah, so could you tell us a bit more about what you actually have found in your research so far?
Yeah, so the general findings were that a great majority of the entries were complaints or maintenance requests. But this was to be expected, since that's what's the main purpose of the Tick-Till app for. Yeah. So but there was also a small portion of praise or ideas. And there was also a large variety of topics, and even within these smaller categories of praise and ideas. So that told us a lot about the information that citizens have about parks. And yeah, we also saw differences in the space and time, and we looked at both monthly differences and over the week and 24 hours. So, yeah.
Could you tell us a bit more about like who is actually reporting, who's using these apps?
Yeah, so we didn't actually have the personal information in the data, so we don't know who submitted the comment, but there's hints if you look at context. So for example, a lot of people mentioned their kids, so those are parents commenting, and we also had a lot of submissions from pedestrians and cyclists. And also sometimes there were issues that related to their homes. So someone commenting was that you had an issue with the lighting from a football field or something shining directly into your apartment. A lot of people complaining about that. So those people are residents. and also people using sports facilities. So, yeah, rinks and outdoor gyms, things like that.
Mm.
We also saw a lot of reference to accessibility needs of the elderly, but it was rare that we saw any hints that it was actually the elderly population submitting those entries. So yeah, they might still submit reports by phone or things like that, because you can also do that with the technique. But yeah, it didn't translate to the textual context where we could detect it. So.
So you talk about who, but what about where these reports are made, and what did you see any like more spatial patterns as well?
Yeah, so we saw a lot of reporting in the city center for all of our categories. So the praise, maintenance requests, complaints, and the ideas. But one important thing to note here on the maps is that they are normalized by the total number of points per category. So in these maps, you can't compare between the maps. That's because we had a lot more maintenance requests, over 70,000 compared to less than 1,000 for the others. So this is a rough comparison, but why the reporting is so centralized could be that some parks are more important to the general community and whether you live nearby or not. And but it could also be like an over-inflation of the issues in the city center compared to like more parks in the suburbs. And we think maybe it could be that less people are visiting these parks and compared to a central park that has a lot of tourists and things like that. But people might not also be as aware of the app in the outskirts of the city or willing to use it. So they might to a lesser degree expect the municipality to act on their entries and then not report that. But we also saw some seasonal variation. So here we have some maps for praise, and the fewest submissions were in autumn. But we also did comparisons over weekly, so weekdays versus weekends, and different times of day, so morning, midday, night, evening. And some differences were statistically significant, including these seasonal variations for praise. And then we did the same for maintenance requests and complaints, and here's also the seasonal variation. What's interesting here is that we saw in the summer, especially Södermalm, this is the region in the middle there, had more reports. So yeah, but again we tested for weekdays, weekends, and times of the day too for these maintenance requests.
Right. So yeah, you mentioned praise and complaints and requests, but what are they actually talk about in these entries?
Yeah. So we have some topics here. As a reminder, we ran the topic model for all categories at once. So topics are not specific to a category. That's important to remember. But here we can see that there's no overlap between the top topics between categories. So they're all different, the top 5. So for praise, the 2 biggest categories were about flowers and snow plowing. And for maintenance and complaints, one of the biggest categories were graffiti. And when we looked at the comments, we also saw that the topic called lampposts, fence posts, if you read the comments, these are actually also about graffiti. So there's a lot of comments about that. And that's related to safety and how areas feel safety-wise. And we also saw some smaller topics, not in the top 5 though, but very important still, about drugs and other crime related to parks. So, and then we also had ideas, and there's a big topic here, or big for ideas about cyclists and bicycle paths. But yeah, if we move on to a little bit about geography. When we looked at praise, we saw that there were especially two topics that were very centralized to one location. And one of these was the conversion of a segment of road to a street. So it was to minimize traffic around the school. And then the other one was a sauna in a park. So for the topic on the play street, people were happy about increased safety, and it's another place for the kids to play. But this topic also has some complaints, so people think, because this is an important link in the road network to get from different places to other places. So when they blocked off this road, people were unhappy about it being, moving the traffic to other areas instead. And some also claim that their kids don't use it, especially in winter, so it's like an unnecessary thing too. And also there was one person raising the idea of, why are we teaching our kids to play in the road? Doesn't make sense. So, yeah. For the sauna, people are generally very happy. They think it's great for health and well-being, and also a place to socialize. So, people want the city to build more of them. But for almost all topics, there's both praise and critique. So there's also some critique in this too, but it's mostly related to other facilities than this specific one.
Interesting.
Yeah. We have a lot here on the what people talk about. There's also about what people say around different times of year. So, for example, the sauna people talked about in August a lot. But we also have these two topics that were the biggest ones for praise. So they, one of them, the snow plowing, is peaking in January naturally, and also same for the topics on flowers, which is peaking in May. And here we have those two topics spatially plotted. Might be a little bit difficult to see, but for the flowers, we have some hotspots around different, smaller cities or regional centers. So, example, around Hässelbygård, in the outskirts. And if you wondering what they're saying, we have a few examples here. So for the flowers, people are generally very happy that they're beautiful, and but it's not a lot of clues in these comments about who is making those comments, but they show just a very positive sentiment of love and attachment to parks. So and for the snow plowing, it was a big topic in praise. So people, when it's done well, they're happy that they can bike even in the winter and things like that. But there's also a lot of similar topics on snow plowing, and most of those are more complaints. So people that can't get around with a pram or a wheelchair, which is obviously very disruptive for the individual person. But in these topics, it was even bigger theme of advocating for better accessibility, not for yourself, but for others, and especially for the elderly. So it was very rare that they themselves commented that they had issues with the snow plowing. So.
All right, thank you. Very interesting. You mentioned safety a bit. Can you tell us a bit more about that? How do people actually feel in terms of safety in parks, and what are the complaints and so on about that?
Yeah. So we saw a few different themes related to safety, like Vania mentioned in the beginning. We had a lot of personal safety related in traffic environments, and also related to illumination, especially at night and in wintertime, obviously. And then there was also some comments about crime and disorder, and especially drug use in parks. So if we start with the traffic, if you remember, we had the biggest topics for ideas was about cyclists and bicycle paths. So there's a lot of ideas that had to do with improving traffic safety specifically, which is interesting. And people want to have a separation between pedestrians and cyclists, for example, with the proper markings on the ground, so people know where to walk or bike, so you don't have collisions. But there's also some more out there suggestions about speeding tickets for cyclists and things like that. So, but also for illumination, we had it was kind of a big topic for parks too, and a lot of people wanted better lighting to feel safer walking through parks, and also we have some people submitting ideas about motion detection lighting, so to deter people who don't want to be seen, so that they're not hanging around in places. And we also had these topics were smaller, but we also had these ones on illegal activity, so drug use and remnants like injection needles and blood lying around. So people were concerned for their kids to find these when they're playing in the park or playgrounds. There were also examples to move. Someone had found an isolated bench where people go to use drugs, and they wanted to remove the bench or things like that. So specific locations that people have identified. And for maintenance requests and complaints, naturally most of the topics were related to general park maintenance, so broken benches and flooding. It turned out it's a big issue that there's taps that don't turn off, and then just flooding everywhere. So and also rubbish and graffiti. But we also had some maintenance related to activity, so maybe inadequate lighting to do your sport in the winter, so at the outdoor rinks and things like that, and broken equipment in playgrounds and in the gyms, outdoor gyms. So that's a big summary of what people are saying.
Yeah, very interesting. You have a very rich data set, I'd say, too.
Definitely.
Well, thank you. And I guess, how does the surrounding context, the characteristics of the area surrounding the parks influence the type of, I guess, the reporting and feedback about the parks?
Yes, we wanted to understand a little bit how the context and even perhaps the types of users were reflecting on the reports or the report entries. And to do that, as Lisa mentioned before, zero-inflated models were used to try to indicate possible relationships between the context of the parks, the quality of the parks in itself, whether they have, football fields and saunas, or, the more things you have, you probably, have more reports if they are not well maintained. But also we want to know things we would like to know how other aspects of, for instance, that has nothing to do with the location of the parks, and the context. So variables like distance to the city center was inputted there. So we wanted to see whether, parks in the periphery would have, the context would matter or some of these components would be more important than others. So that what you see there in the screen just back me is basically the results from 3 models, and it says there praise, maintenance, request, complaints, and the idea. So they are 3 different models, and you so it's counts of the reports that people actually put through the Ceccato, and as you know, this is distributed by the parks, and on the other side you see a number of explanatory factors, and the green part that you see there with a lot of numbers, and I mean, you are not supposed to maybe think too much about that, but they are actually the important bits, I guess, of the results, because they indicate factors that have been relevant to explain the importance of the context on the reporting of this the praise, the maintenance, and the ideas. So what did we learn from these results? I want to go into detail to each individual factor. It would take a long time, but there are some factors that actually, results that were expected, right? You could say more amenities in the park. So if you have football fields, if you have playgrounds, the more things you have, probably it would be also related to the size of the park. The more you have that, more reports you have. And obviously this is something that we would be expecting. We also think probably it's not only the size of the parks, it also can be also a question of that you have lots of users making, using the park, and they are very engaged to those kinds of amenities. So as we see it, the amenity there is some sort of a surrogate indicator of that people are engaged in those parks. There are other kinds of things that probably we would also expect, like, if these parks are located in, high-income areas, people normally tend to be more engaged, and especially for instance, to say good things about those parks. So praise, it comes up, with a significant and a positive sign there. They also come up with ideas for those parks. But we also see, for instance, other kinds of factors that are more interesting to be discussed. And for instance, the question about parks that are perceived to be, or to be in areas that are perceived as unsafe. So you would say why people are reporting, in areas that probably have quite a lot of unsafety. They are reporting more or less, so that there is these kinds of, so initially it feels like counterintuitive, but possibly they are reporting less, or just because they feel the park as unsafe and that they are not going there. So the area is unsafe and people don't go to the park. And so that's possibly it's what explains the negative sign there. So it's an indication of most likely of place avoidance, right? An engagement of that park. So there are these kinds of interesting results that we are going to talk much more in the article later on. But what we can see clear here in this model is that the reporting is an indication quite well of the engagement of the population with the Ceccato app. So it might be that people are not reporting, and you could think that things are good there, but in that park. But it's no information in the parks does not mean that things are good. You know, it might be that there is a normalization of the problems and people are not reporting the problem. So what we are actually measuring with the modeling is an analysis of the reportings and the quality of those reportings and the sentiments that people are flashing out. Yeah.
Right. So you talked. This kind of revealed, I guess, the use of the app in a sense, right? Like, so yeah, this. Sorry, I got a bit lost. But then, yeah, what could you summarize? I guess what the Ceccato reports reveal about the actual use of the app, and I guess then also the main takeaways of the study now. Yeah.
Yeah. So we saw, like we talked about, lower app user frequency in the suburbs overall. But like Vania talked about, it doesn't mean that there's not information to be gathered here from the citizens. And yeah, it's a bit of a limitation, but hopefully in the future there will be more reporting overall with the app. Also we saw a great majority of reports related to maintenance issues, which was unsurprising. It was by far the biggest category. So, for example, issues on snow plowing. So, yeah, but we also saw praise and for snow plowing when it was handled well, and so that's great. But the communication is not fully circular. So, the app. In the app and on social media, there's actually some people complaining about that they're not getting feedback about what happened to their comments, so they don't know really how it went, and so it's a little bit of a not closed loop.
And then I guess what's your conclusion, or what can we bring with us from this study?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so we saw a variety of comments, and they provide a lot of different insights for planning, and like how to prioritize accessibility and safety needs, park quality, and how the municipality can better respond. And also, I think summarizing the comments can help with this problem of establishing a conversation with the citizens more than a linear communication. So the commenter can get more of an insight to what actually goes into, because obviously the municipality does a lot with these, but it's not always something that the people get to know about. So, and to upgrade lesser used parks, the municipality can. We think they should prioritize amenities, as we saw that was a good thing, and look at the ideas that the people are submitting. And we have also some recommendations. We saw a variety of comments, like we talked about. So, wait, hang on. Yeah, to use these. To get some further insights for planning specifically. So to improve maintenance, accessibility, and safety. So the app does provide real-time reports. So maybe that could be used to act quicker. And aesthetic appeal is obviously very important, and amenities. So that should be put to use.
I guess. Well, what is then the way forward? What's next?
Got a little sneak peek here. We want to. So obviously you can, or not. I don't know if we've mentioned, but you can submit images in the app. So that could be a great way to. Do some analysis on image, object recognition, and things like that. And you can get sentiment from images too, and so that would be very interesting to look at. But
right.
I think that's all we had for
Thank you very much. Very interesting study, and like I said, very rich data set. I think you could probably work with this many years from now on also. We will turn to questions from the audience now. I see we have a question already, but others just write in the chat or in the Q&A if you want to add more. We're from Carl McLean, who says, great to see safety being covered in the research. My organization has recently been involved in park sector guidance, safer parks improving access for women and girls with a range of partners. We'll be interested to know if you separated any data in Stockholm specifically around safety for women and girls in park / perceptions of safety and harassment, etc. I know that was not the key focus of this exercise, but curious if you could segment that data in the future.
Yeah, so, well, we didn't have the personal information about who is submitting the comments as like a GDPR thing that we can have access to, but it's obviously a very interesting thing to look at. But I know you've talked about these things before, so maybe you have some insights.
Yes, I think exactly like Lisa said, the data on, for instance, gender is not available. But as you saw in the way that we did the analysis, there are hints on the comments that would lead us to, get information about, at least have an idea of who's talking. Sometimes can be, obvious when you talk about sexual harassment, because the large majority of victims of sexual harassment are women, but not only women, but the large majority is. So if you search for right, Andrea? If you search for instance, sexual harassment in Swedish, probably you would end up with a number of hits there. And in that way, you could backtrack and know a little bit about these incidents, assuming that most of them would be, for instance, against women, but it might be that it could be anyone that are harassed. I recently did another work that looked at harassment, and we have seen elderly being harassed. So if we would put only harassment, it would probably pick up a variety of groups beyond women. So I think backtracking would be a possibility. Do you have any other ideas, Andrea, on how we could separate the harassment by gender, I guess?
Yes, I guess we have this problem, the limitation of the data that is not containing personal information, so that's something that we cannot really solve, but we can try to use these models to look at specific topic, in this case could be the harassment, and then try to prompt the models to understand if they can give an idea about how the sentences are formulated, and that could be an indication of maybe the age, but that's something to be investigated, I guess.
I guess I have a very general question, I guess. So since you have quite a lot of data and so on, was there something about the different observations that got you surprised, like in terms of what people complain about in parks, or what they actually praise, I guess, because you gave some examples, but was there something that really do they actually care about that, or similar in
the surprises, I guess.
Yeah.
I think there were a couple of surprises, right? We were surprised by people talking about sauna in particular, where a specific function that probably you wouldn't talk in daily life, and then people actually are there other surprises that you found?
Yeah, I think maybe the sauna, and just that there's, I think maybe the a lot about the traffic safety was surprising to me. I hear people talk a lot about cyclists and pedestrians and things like that, but it was also very, very reflected in the data. So maybe it's not so surprising if you think about it. But yeah,
I'm thinking about a little bit more also about that. Since it was a lot about maintenance and complaints, and I'm guessing it's a little bit also how the Stockholm city is framing the app, I guess, and perhaps how that then influences how they will actually report also. But do you think there's a need for then maybe reframe the app, or if we should have another app for safety, or how if we want to more like safety related questions, for instance, or I don't know if you have any thoughts about it?
There is a category for safety. I think it was implemented in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. So there is you can choose from within the categories there. You can already select it. But as you mentioned, the app is not made for praise. Normally it is more to report potholes and problems that people see around the city. So that's why it's not a surprise that we get quite a lot of more complaints than praise, which it obviously does not mean that we cannot use the praise comments as a base to understand what the citizens value in parks, and what is the beautiful the analysis that has been done is to show also that this praise and complaints, they are not only vary by type but also over time, so which probably for planners can be good, because they can tailor different kinds of interventions based on what people are valuing the most. If they are sometimes complaining, we need to remember that this information, the ticketil, is used already nowadays to, fix potholes. It is what we normally say in Swedish. It is operative, so it is used on the daily basis. So our idea here is, can this data be used a little bit more strategically for planning, a little bit more on the long term, when we compile this data over a long period? What are the patterns that the data reveal? Because the data today is quite useful for day-to-day management, but we would fully, I think, argue that this data also have a very good value for planning in the future, for more long-term planning.
Interesting. Yeah, we got some more questions from the audience. So maybe I missed it, but what years of data did you have? Have you seen any change in use of the app during this time period? Change in reports, more or less report, for example. And you also mentioned that most of these reports were maintenance request complaints. Do you have information how these were addressed and how quick? So I guess the first part, did you say change over time?
Yeah, well, the first thing was what the data is from. It's from June 2023 to May 2025, or June. It's 2 years from the middle of 2023 to 2025. Let's see, what was the other? Yeah,
and did you see any, I guess, variation or over time in number of observations, I guess?
I think it's generally the reporting is quite similar for the 2 years, but then sometimes it varies. So, for example, with that conversion of a play street, I looked into that project from the municipality, and it ended during our period of the time period that we had. So the reportings stop on that play street after that, so we can see that. But
and I think it was something about how fast they were addressed, right?
We didn't have information on that, but you've worked with Tictil before, so maybe you have some
I didn't get the question. Or what
Oh,
is-
if the complaints, how fast they were addressed by the city, if I'm understanding correctly,
Yeah,
like
so
if there's
if
any
it's-
data on that, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any. I haven't done any analysis about how quick the municipality gets back. I guess it also depends on the kinds of complaints. If it is just changing a lamp, you can do straight away, I guess. But if it is a major, maintenance work, then so I think it's a bit of a hard. We didn't do any analysis. In a previous work that we have used the Ticatil data, we looked variations of reporting during the pandemic, and there we could see very clear engagement of the population with kinds of topics during the pandemic reflecting people's changing routine activity before and after the pandemic. For instance, moving around in parks and talking about the quality of the cleaning of the park when people use or go around with dogs and things like that. So you would see much more of those kinds of things post-pandemic, which probably would indicate more use of the parks than before. So there are seasonal variations, and very much linked it also, if it is cold out there are activities that you cannot do anymore, but in the summer, then those kinds of amenities will attract people. So for sure, you see clearly seasonal variations that pretty much reflect people's routine activity and whether they visit these parks and the kinds of things they do varying during the summer and the winter, because we are in a city that actually is very cold during the winter, and which would limit the use of the parks for a number of activities. So you are bound to have some sort of a fluctuation.
But maybe if I can add something is about, so Lisa mentioned this data, it's like only 2 years in some way. So obviously we cannot really track long-term changes of activity in parks. But I think the methodology that we start to develop could be also used for analyzing more like long-term changes and long-term data to see if this kind of crowdsourced data can show some changes in the long term. Now, for the restriction data that we are using right now, it's only 2 years, so it's only the seasonal variation, cannot be seen the long-term changes.
No.
It's true.
So there's a question from Flora. So here's the question. I wonder if you have a reflection on groups living and spending time in the outskirts of the city. Do they have less information, time, citizen empowerment, for example, language constraints to send comments? So if you talked about technological barriers, I guess, but then this is a different type of barrier.
Yeah, do you have?
Yeah, I mean, this is not a typical only from this type of data. Even in traditional ways of collecting the data, we see much less people participating in traditional survey data collection in areas, what we could say maybe deprived areas, people engaging less. Some of these places also have minorities, and language can be a barrier, and definitely we see this also coming up in this in the crowdsourced data, and not only in this study but also in other studies. What we could do with this is, there are probably technical, weighting, how we could probably weight the reports from certain areas in relation to the others, because we know that. That could be probably one way of moving forward, but it is not something we did in this. We assumed that there were parks in the outskirts, and we, because we collapsed thousands and thousands and thousands of these reports, we would expect there would be, some of these stories coming up. One possibility actually that we could do is to try to see if the kinds of things that people talk in the outskirts, especially where we have a low response rate, that low participation or low engagement, differ from the ones in this inner city. It is a good idea, I guess, but we haven't done yet in this study. Very good point there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So another question is, were there any patterns that show higher reporting in different types of parks, like larger destination parks versus smaller neighborhood parks, or was it generally even spread across these types? And this may give a picture of how people feel a sense of ownership or responsibility for different types.
That's a good point.
Yeah, we had a lot more submissions for certain popular parks, and those smaller neighborhood parks that maybe people use a lot, they don't always comment on. Like maybe it's a really small park that you just go with your kids that has a playground, but it's super small and just in between buildings, residential buildings. People don't, maybe sometimes there's not any comments at all. So there's a big difference between how many comments parks get. So yeah, we have some very, very popular ones too.
Yeah. And there's another one that says, thank you for a great presentation, very interesting study. Understandably, the results of the study focus on takeaways for planning and management of parks, but it would be very valuable contribution if you could also perhaps in a future presentation, publication, elaborate more specifically on the methodology, model, tools and data use, as well as the potential use of complementary data or methods to achieve a more accurate or clear understanding. If you have any thoughts on that, perhaps.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we will now. In this webinar we keep quite short the model part, but we will discuss more in details all the models. Also, we will probably provide all the details on the tools that we use for analyzing the data, also to reproduce the results or use this method in other scenarios.
And I guess some of the complementary data is the control variables that you had also in the models with the perceived safety and crime and so on. Yeah, interesting. And there's another one also. I think it's like, in reality, this ends up in the same problem as many other survey questions. How should the level of severity be assessed for operational work? How should we think about this? Yes.
I know that the municipality, I think, probably work on these kinds of priorities levels for others management work. I don't know if this extends to parks also. So it is not something that we know a lot about it, but I guess it is part of the how the planning system works on daily basis, how they give priority to, if it is something that has to be fixed because people has to use the streets, or if it is a park that is used on a daily basis, so obviously there is no plow and needs to be there. Probably this is what I would say is part of the Stockholm Stad daily work, and not us. But this does not, come with our data. So we can say very little about that, about the kinds of priorities. But we know already from other studies that there is, some system on how people give priority to different types of problems.
Interesting. And then there's another question about data. Like, have you compared with other data? I think it would be exciting to compare with the free text responses in safety surveys. Yes, I guess a very quick response to this one as we're nearing the end. Yeah, the data I have access to shows that many people raise concerns about safety on jogging trails. So I guess if there's been any comparisons with other free texts, or it's something you're planning in the future, perhaps, such as in safety surveys.
I would say we cannot compare. Well, we do have the geography of perceived safety in Stockholm, and this is already embedded in the modeling. So to some extent, we already, use that information to have an idea on how safety actually can explain the geography of reporting. But definitely can be further explored.
Okay, I think we have run out of time almost. But I'd just like to say thank you very much for a very interesting study and very nice presentation as well. Thank you to the audience for very interesting questions that started some discussion over here. Before you all leave, I would like you to invite you or remind you about the next webinar, which will be about the role of place management in crime prevention, where it's case studies of Stockholm and Växjö. This is on the 9th of April. And I will actually be part of that seminar. So please put that in your calendars. But otherwise, until then, take care and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Recording stopped.